Good afternoon, one and all. Welcome to another session of the CTO Series as part of Enterprise APU for 2021. And we've been doing this on a monthly basis starting in May this year. And we are now at our fifth session. And we have a very distinguished guest this afternoon, Mr. Suresh from Global Tectonic Shifts. Is that the name of the company, or is that the title of the talk? I think that's the title of the talk. Global Tectonic Shifts in the Industry and Workforce. And I think Mr. Suresh comes from a very vast background in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, and he's going to share his insights on what he perceives to be the correct pathway to building entrepreneurs as they move into the workforce. And that's interesting because a lot of our students or early starters in terms of graduating into the workforce, they are unaware of their potential in developing their entrepreneurial mindset towards the benefit either as a startup or being using that mindset to develop ideas for an organization. And it does not only mean that you have to do a startup, but also being entrepreneurial in an organization which you are serving. So thank you, Mr. Suresh, for joining us and spending your afternoon with us. And Mr. Suresh, incidentally enough, is also our industry advisory panel member who has served on the panel for some years now. So I want to thank you publicly for that. Yeah, I think your valuable information. Yeah, your valuable information and time spent with us on the industry advisory panel has been really a good change to some of the inputs that we want to inculcate into our programs and curriculums. Likewise, Meera is here. Miss Meera has always been a strong member of Enterprise at APU, and she will moderate the session. And I want to thank the other members, Rachel, Miss Rachel, who has basically done the coordination for all our events, and previously Dr. Janita as well. And then, of course, Jerry Ling from our student services, who does all the back end platform arrangements. Yeah. So I want to pass this session back to Meera as the moderator, and I want to wish everyone a very good session. And I want to thank again Mr. Suresh for his time and valuable insights into the topic. So over to you, Meera. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you. And yes, hi, Suresh. Welcome. And hello to everyone who is here. Good, really, really good to have you here with us, Suresh, today. And hello to every participant who's joining us today, regardless of whether you're from APU, our guests, everyone, lecturers, academicians, industry members. Welcome. I'm Meera, okay, your friendly accounting lecturer from APU. Yeah, and I want to take this opportunity to welcome Suresh on board. Yeah, hi, Suresh. Suresh represents a large global multinational bank, and he has a role in being the global head, all right, in digital transformation and enablement. Yeah, I get tongue twisted there. Okay, so what I really like about your profile, Suresh, which was really interesting, was it says that you are a dreamer, okay, and also a tech geek, all right, and you are taking on this role, okay, in terms of transforming and enabling things, all right, within your designation, within your role. Yeah, so I'm sure you take a lot of pride in this role. Yeah, so I'm going to let you do the rest of your introduction in a little bit, okay. But before that, I just want to take a few minutes to acknowledge all my team members from Enterprise at APU. All the work that we do at Enterprise at APU is, jointly an effort which is led by Professor Vinesh earlier, all right? And we have been really empowered by his leadership, okay, to do a lot of things. And we also have Prof. Angeline now with us, who's also a part of our Enterprise efforts. And of course, I have to mention our rockstar Dash, okay, who has actually guided us since early this year, May this year, towards whatever that we are doing. He has really, really guided us, and I have to take this opportunity today to thank him for whatever that he has really taught us, imparted, and guided and trained us, yeah, to where we are and how we are today. So enterprise at APU has a lot of plans for academicians, students alike, yeah, lots of things going on, guys. So my colleague Rachel is going to share the link to our enterprise section on our APU website in the chat. Yeah. So please do check out our efforts, okay, and find out what we do at Enterprise and APU and come and be part of it, okay. We have an entrepreneurship society, a club going on as well. So students who are here, it might be the perfect opportunity for you to come on board and join this thriving effort. Yeah, this is the time for you to build yourself and engage, all right, in activities that we are guiding you towards. So so that's it. And so just before we start and get Suresh going on our very interesting topic today on the global tectonic changes in industry and workplace, I would like to just run a very quick survey, all right, for the participants here to just find out, okay, which area you guys are coming from. Just one question, guys. So can I have my team just share the link in the comment section for the survey, please? All right, it's just 1 minute, yeah. So please refer to the comment section, and yeah, so you can see the link there. It's shared by the AP. So it will be great if you guys just fill that in very quickly, just 1 minute, and then we will get going with the session. Okay, this question is going to help us find out which, what are the areas that our participants are coming from today. Okay, which areas, which specialty, which faculty, or which program. Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see a good chat going. And Suresh and I would really like to have this session to be interactive as possible. Yeah, just keep the questions coming in. Yeah, throw in your questions, and please do, challenge us. Tell us about what you think about something and get us to comment on it. We'll be really, really happy to do that. Yeah. Okay, so, I see some responses coming in. Thank you guys for that. Okay, so Suresh, your highest number of participants today are from accounting and finance. All right. Then we have technology, okay, foundation and engineering. Yeah. And of course, we have all these participants from all areas. Yeah. From all the APU students, different programs, undergrad, we have postgrad as well. Yeah, my master's students, everyone from every different level. So take it away, Suresh. Okay, and we are very excited. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Meera. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks, Prof. Vignesh, as well, for giving me this opportunity to come here and share some of my thoughts with the audience that we have today from the university, right? I'm going to share my slide deck, so it's going to help guide the presentation, but from time to time, we'll come back to this mode as well. Really, the objective is to ensure that everybody gets a good, wholesome experience out of this 1 hour that we're going to do for everyone. And I want the audience to leave with my thoughts on what I see transformation occurring, and what you can, as students or as people that are just starting off your careers, can do to take advantage of the changes that are happening and excel in whatever you want to do, right? And that's the real key for this particular presentation that we're going to have today, yeah? So before I go on, there are some ground rules that need to be very clear. The views that I express here generally are my views and my personal views. They do not represent my employer, Standard Chartered Bank, and so on and so forth, right? They are personal to myself, right? And I just want to encourage everybody, right? We need to have a good session here, and we want people to enjoy themselves. So please also make sure that you engage with us, ask questions. There is no question that is stupid, right? And I call it out up front. I tell this not only to the people who hear me talking, but I also tell this to all of my staff and people in general, right? That we have to start somewhere. We have to drive that curiosity. We have to encourage that curiosity, because that's what drives entrepreneurs. And that's what drives entrepreneurs not only outside, but also in the workplace. Yeah. So you can work for a company and be an entrepreneur. And I'm a classic example of that. And that entrepreneurship and that spirit of asking and curiosity can only be given through questions. So by all means, please ask us, and we will try to insulate that or input that into our session as we go today. Yeah. So thanks for that. So before I start, I think it's important to just go through very quickly, my background and to get you guys to understand a little bit about who I am and so on and so forth, right? So my name is Suresh Gnasegarah, a very, very funky name. Gnasegarah is not a common name. There's a story behind that. Apparently, it's supposed to be spelled G-N-A-N-A, which is very common among people who have Sri Lankan heritage. But the British officer who spelled my grandfather's name spelled it wrongly, right? And as a result of that, when he did that, my father's name, when he spelled it wrongly, it became a very unique name. So when Google was invented, I entered Gnasegarah inside there, and that spelling that I have is only the spelling that me, my brother, and my father have, right? So I decided to adopt that name, and that's the name that I've been carrying so far, right? So I am a person who grew up in the Malaysian education system, right? Just to be very clear with everybody, I studied locally as well. I'm an alumni of the Multimedia University. I've done a whole lot of studies after that as well, but to be very clear, I think Malaysia is the land of milk and honey, and it gives a very good base for people to interact, right? So interact and understand a global infrastructure, a global way of working that is not present in many other things. So you could go to Australia to study, you could go to the UK to study, but you wouldn't get that good mix of Asia, Europe, the Chinese, the Indians, the Malays, the mix of pretty much half the world population, maybe even more, right? In as much of a depth as you can get in Malaysia, right? And so Malaysia gives that opportunity to all of you. I would recommend that if you are studying in this country, that you do not just have a circle of friends that are just within your race or within your ethnicity or within your group. Make sure you have that across the board, because that's not only going to help you make friends right now. In the global international world, the more the mix that you have with your friends, the better that you will be able to understand different culture, right? So we are a microcosm of culture, right? If you have Chinese friends, they might not be the same as your friends from China, right? But you would have some understanding because they share similar cultural traits, right? Similarly, because you have people from China who are also studying here, take an opportunity to go and engage them and understand them, right? Because doing business in that country is one of the biggest things that you could appreciate and enjoy in your future career steps. So balance both of those outcomes very well, because I think it's very, very important. Make sure you mix well, right? In university, I was a very naughty guy, right? I studied hard and I partied hard as well. And I think it's important that all of you do this. Make sure that you focus on your education, understand your content, and we'll talk a little bit about what are some of the things that employers today are looking for, right? And be open-minded, right? So what I studied, I was a software engineering student. Today I'm running global transformation, and transformation might sound very techy, but it's not only technology, it's also driving business processes and other types of changes, right? So what I studied and what I finally ended up doing over the years has been radically different, yeah? And I have a family, of course, of 2 beautiful young kids, and I live here in KL, right? All right, that's a little bit of my personal side. Professional side, I have worked in many areas, right? So I started off my career actually teaching, right, in MMU as well, Multimedia University. I taught there. I was staying in Malacca, got bored of Malacca after a while, and decided, hey, I need to come to the industry, and that's where I moved to the oil and gas sector. Yeah, where I started off my career, and a lot of you look at this and say, how do you know what's the right job to start off with? When I applied for my first job in the industry, I got a job as a help desk analyst. I had no clue what that job was. Right? I just said, hey, I come back to KL from Malacca. Malacca is very quiet. It's a great city. Nice if you're on holiday there, but sometimes it can get a little bit boring if you're there too long. So I was a bit bored. No offense to Malaccans here. But I came back and I applied for a job that I didn't understand or didn't know, right? But I took that as a challenge. Grew in the oil and gas industry. Started off as a help desk analyst. Within a couple of years, grew up to running that organization. Went on to do transformation work in sales. Went on to do transformation work in IT and tech before ending up in a bank, which is what I'm doing right now. And I drive transformation activities both across tech, across the business processes, and so on and so forth. Last few years, mainly business processes, right? And that's the key here. So my current job, if you ask me, is driving change, right? And driving change is a very open world, and that is very exciting because the world is constantly changing. No change has happened as fast as has happened over the last 24 months, right? COVID has shook the entire business world, has shook the entire organization across the world, right? Things that I never imagined could happen are happening today. If I walk into my office right now, it's empty, right? Because people are virtually working, right? I am talking to a bunch of students here that previously I could only do if I was in your university, which I'm not right now, right? I'm engaging with Meera, who's a co-host, who's probably many kilometers away from where I am, right? And all of these dynamics are going to change your working world drastically, right? And that's what the session today is about, right? Between me and Meera, she's going to be asking me questions from time to time, and Meera, you just tell me when you have a question.
Yes. I have one right now, Suresh. I've got my first one.
All right. Let's do it.
Yeah. So, Suresh, it would be great for us to also find out the challenges that you faced when you moved industries. I mean, it's common to hear people moving from industry to academia. Someone like me, yeah, I've heard that a lot. But you did it. You went like from academia into industry. So, you tell us, throughout your session about your experience of it and the challenges that you faced.
Okay.
You said you didn't do anything, So.
And it's not about academia to business to academia. At the end of the day, it is one thing: change. That's the only constant. Right?
Awesome.
I'm going to get everybody aligned to this. Right? 1 year ago, if you told me that 90% of the workforce will be working from home, I'd say you're mad. Right? Today, 90% of the world is working from home, right? In one way or form. And of course, that's going to change as we open up, we go to phase 2, phase 3, right? But my advice to all of you is change is scary. I always tell this. You have to be a little bit scared when you're going to do some change. Why? Because it raises your sense of heightened awareness, right? It heightens your awareness. It makes you prepared. It says, hey, I need to be aware of things that are coming around me. Have that little bit of fear at the back of your head, because that's going to prepare you for dealing with the things that are going to come to you, right? How do I prepare myself? I have that assumption. I go into a new role or a new job telling the world that I am not the smartest person in the room, right? Especially when I'm going into a new person. I might have 2 master's degrees, but that does not mean I know the job or areas that are coming into the next world, right? And having that humbleness to acknowledge that you are not the best, right, will help you become the best. Right, and I think that's the key thing. When I joined from academia, I was probably one of the top lecturers at that point. I was getting good reviews and so on and so forth. But I wanted to shake the world, right? And I came to the industry. The first day I was answering calls, I was scared as hell, right? Because I didn't know what the hell was going to come through the next call that was going to come to me at that point in time, right? But I aced it, and I aced it not because I believe I knew everything, but because I accepted I didn't know everything I needed to learn. So don't be afraid to learn. I think it's that general mantra. Yeah, I want to put in. Okay, so let's go on, and I'm going to go to my slide. How is the workplace changing? I think it's important for everybody to understand. If we are saying COVID is changing the world and everything is going to go, how is the workplace changing? And if you are a student, how is this going to drive the next step, right? Of the work. Firstly, what we have to all get used to is increase in remote working, right? Everybody knows this. Okay, I'm doing this now remotely, and I can read these slides, but that's not the objective. You're gonna ask me, so what, right? So what, Suresh? If I am logging on from my house and I'm doing my work, right? Big deal, right? Everybody does this. It is true, but you also miss a lot of things like relationships, right? Having to go to the pantry and having lunch together builds relationships with people, right? Builds the ability for you to connect to people. In a remote working world, you're not going to be able to do that. And as a young kid, right, who's going to go into your new careers, right, that is going to be a disadvantage for you because you will not be able to get that level of mentoring, that level of coaching, and so on and so forth. And what I tell people is, increased remote working is expected, and we are going to have to deal with that for the foreseeable future. Today we have Delta, tomorrow we have Gamma variant, and we'll have Lambda variants and all kinds of different variants, and we will have to adapt accordingly, right? But what you need to do as a student is make sure that you establish those connections. So every week, no matter what, I set aside Fridays to connect with people I don't usually connect to on a day-to-day basis, who I usually would connect to if I go to the pantry and have a coffee, but today I don't. right? And I set aside some time when I established that to get more mentorship from different people, right? I think that's absolutely important to recognize. So the world is going to a more remote working environment. It's going to be harder for you if you are not prepared to establish those relationships. So make sure you make an effort. I think that's number one. And that's related to the bottom side where I talked about video conferencing overtaking phone calls, right? Because that's clear. More and more people, I see a lot of students, and I know you guys, probably some of you are thinking this, you'll off your video and not interact, and you just talk on audio and assume that that's fine. In a world where you are remote, if you do not connect visually to people, if people cannot see your face and understand what you are doing, you are going to be left behind, right? Not to say always you will be on. Of course, sometimes there's going to be something, there's going to be some crazy things happening. Half the time when my boss is scolding me, sometimes my daughter who's 5 years old will run in, right? But because I left my video on, it establishes that rapport, right? So my boss was scolding me because I did something wrong, or maybe I did something right, but it pissed off somebody else. When I got my 5-year-old daughter coming in, that kind of rapport you cannot buy if you're always hiding behind a black screen, right? You might hide behind your black screen from your lecturers, but trust me, that's not going to build that relationship for you in the working world. And it's all about relationships. So that's one element of where the working place is changing, right? That one dimension. The second thing is you're going to see new top-tier employers, right? What do I mean by that, right? Today, you probably you think, hey, if I'm an accounting student, I'm going to go and work in PwC, I'm going to work in some KPMG and so on and so forth. Those are the top-tier angles, right? And those companies have different cultures that are driving what they can in an environment where people are in the office, right? But that's no longer the case, right? So for example, one of the startups that I work with and I coach, right, all of their people are everywhere, right? And if you look at when I was a student at MMU, some of my classmates who, when they graduated, went and worked for a company called MyTaxi. If you ask me in 2002, 2004, maybe 2004, 2005, can't remember exactly, but when MyTaxi first came, right, I would have never imagined that became Grab, right? And Grab today is a multi-billion-dollar industry that every company that is probably going to list in the New York Stock Exchange in the near future, and it's going to explode, right? It had humble origins in Malaysia as MyTaxi, right? And so this COVID crisis will create that as well, right? So for those of you, I think there's a sambal guy who sells sambal in Shopee. He sold like 1 million bottles of sambal ever since the thing started. Those of you who knew that Indian lady who ran that cooking show on YouTube and now makes 7,000-8,000 ringgit because she was a nice Indian lady who taught people how to cook Indian food, right? In Malay, right? And that got her a big audience. That's Subu Pavitra, I think that's her name, right? Yes, correct. And that's going to drive a lot of new companies, right? And that's some of them can be you, right? And you can drive that as well. So that Grab Taxi example I gave you was from somebody or from a business started off who wanted to just solve one problem: the taxi unreasonable, unreliable in the old days. Now a multi-million-dollar industry, right? And that's going to change. So you're going to start thinking the companies that you're going to work for are probably going to be different, right? Whether you're in accounting or technology, that's going to drive that thing, right? A big area of opportunity of where the workplace is changing is cybersecurity threats, right? And that's actually absolutely important because that's going to drive a couple of things. And I think Jason on the chat has a good question. Will they increase an employee's salary, right? The answer with this new increased work from home and with this new remote working type environments. Now, the answer is yes and no, right? Yes and no, because companies also say, since you're remote working, you're not driving into the office. So I'll tell you, for example, I used to wake up at 7 o'clock every day, and by 7:30, by 8 o'clock, I used to be off my house and driving for a 1-hour trip into my office. I've not done that anymore, right? I'm lucky enough, my company has given a one-time fee where we could equip our homes, right? But not all employers will do that, right? So you need to talk to your employers and be aware of those conditions and work with your bosses per se, right, on how you can adjust to this new working world. So yes, you might have increased air conditioning costs, or you might have increased internet costs, but you're not driving from home to the office anymore, right? And a classic example, I used to spend 400 or 500 ringgit petrol every month, right? Driving into office and back, right? Today, I'm lucky if I fill my petrol tank once a month, right? Maybe twice at the most, right? And so that give and take attitude is going to be absolutely important to make you valuable to the employer, right? Don't count that pennies, I think is key. Which then leads me to that cybersecurity threat. Cybersecurity is a big industry that you're going to look at, the scams that people have, right? Make sure you understand them because that's going to affect employees and businesses. And I think that's going to be quite key and drive a lot of the new businesses that are going. It is going to be very digital driven. And with digital, you're going to get new scams, new threats that are going to come through, right? Everything from the Macau scam to any of those other items that we see generally. So absolutely important for you to recognize that the new workplace has to see cybersecurity as a very, very important thing. Doesn't matter if you're in a university, you see threats like ransomware where people come in and take over whole companies and encrypt everything, and people can't access any of their data, right? Data becomes very, very, very powerful, and absolutely that marriage. So universities like APU give you the business skills, give you the technical skills, right? And you got to marry both. Right, that is something you cannot avoid. You cannot go anymore and say, I don't know technology, right? You might not find work if you don't know technology. You need to marry things. But that is also important because there are a lot of people who are going to be left out, and you need to help them get to become digitized, which is also another opportunity, which I'll talk about slightly later on, right? The last two, I want to talk about how we view efficiency. Now, learning never stops, right? Learning, I say here, automation, digitization, and reskilling becomes absolutely important. Learning never stops, right? Even if you graduate, I can bet you whatever you study is going to be irrelevant in a couple of months. Well, not a couple of months, maybe at least a couple of years, right? You have to keep yourself updated, right? Machines are going to take over a lot of the work that we do, right? Today, when I WhatsApp, right, I just talk to WhatsApp, and WhatsApp just types everything that I'm doing, right? If I want to drive somewhere, I use my car and I say, hey, Siri, take me to my office, right? And Waze automatically opens up and it runs like that, right? I used to have to tap it. If you're doing work that is rudimentary and ending, it's going to be exposed to automation, right? And that is dangerous, right? For you, if you are not prepared to change yourself, okay? But it also brings a lot of opportunities. So I'll give you an example. In the 1900s, I think, or the early 1900s, the early 1800s, 93% of the work of the people were in agriculture jobs, right? By 1950, that has just shifted. I think there's more than 70% of the people who are no longer in agricultural jobs, right? And if you look at it, just 5 years, 10 years ago, taxi drivers used to be booming everywhere. Today, they're just virtually wiped out, right? And again, one of the startups I work with, or I have, is working on zero deposit schemes for renting houses, which means that real estate agents will probably not be relevant also in the future. Maybe they will be, or maybe they won't, right? They have robots and stuff to show houses. So be aware that you need to keep changing because the workplace also is actively changing, right? And how people view efficiency is different, right? And what I mean by that is, in the past, people used to say, I need to get more and more efficient, more and more efficient, more and more efficient. But so companies like Toyota used to be prided by the fact that they had zero to no inventory, so just in time and so on and so forth. But today, many car companies are dying because they don't have inventory of chips, right? So efficiency and versus resilience is going to be the new word, right? I want to be efficient, but am I also resilient? If the banks are, if the companies, if the government suddenly shuts down, right, for half a day, right, or half a year, can my company adjust? Right, and I think that sort of things, how people view efficiency and how people view resilience, is going to be very, very important. Yeah, and maybe I'm going to pause by here. Meera, do you have any questions, or do you want to take any questions from the team?
Yes, Suresh, we do have some questions coming in, and at the same time, I would like to ask you. Now, we look at all this transformation and everything happening right now at the workplace. Now, what sort of measures do have companies, out there taken to actually cater this transformation and also, upskill their current talent and also prepare for the new entrants that are coming in? And all of them are probably at different stages of understanding technology. We've got employees at different phases or different learning capacity. Yeah. So how do you address this?
Okay. So number one, don't depend on your employee to train you.
Oh yes.
I gotta tell people this again and again. again. People keep saying, "Oh, I'm going to wait for my employer to have this training program for me to come." Right? That is good in thinking. And in the past, it used to be required because it was expensive. Okay. Today, I can tell you, last year I did a course with Wharton University in Pennsylvania. Right? I did it from my house in Kelana Jaya, PJ. Right? And I paid next to nothing. Right? To do that course. Which was a strategic management course with an internationally recognized university, global lecturers and stuff for next to nothing through a platform called edx.org, right? And it was great. I learned from these two very amazing German lecturers. Did my company pay for it? No. Did I have to fork out a little bit of my money? Yes. Did I benefit from it? Absolutely. And maybe I made 4, 5, 6 times more than what I invested in it. And that is learning that I want people to start thinking on that front, right? It's not about somebody doing learning to you. You need to do learning by yourself. If you don't, you're screwed, right? And I'm being a bit blunt here, but that's the reality of it. The commodity that all of us sell is our brain and our minds and what is in our minds, right? That is the high value activity. That doesn't mean you mustn't do grunt work. I always tell people when I first go into a job, I'll always do and learn the grunt work and suffer for the first few days or first few months, right? Because I really want to understand the depth of it, right? And that kind of drives the change, right? So there's a question here from William Otino who's asking, speaking of, if something becomes irrelevant so fast, right? How did diversity of education help, right? For me, because I took courses in different places. So I studied in MMU, so I got a very good Malaysian background, understanding people from China, Malaysia, had lectures from all around the world. That really helped me. But I also did my master's degree. I did it in Australia. I lived in the US for a year while working with another one of the technology companies, right? What that helped me is because I realized that I didn't know everything. Right? I was telling myself that I was not the smartest kid in the block, right? And I always said, okay, because I'm not the smartest kid, because I'm not the most advantageous kid, I need to keep pushing myself, right? And what I realized very quickly is I didn't want to put myself in a position where I didn't know stuff, so I went on learning, right? And that's very key. It's related to the question that Jason is asking as well in the overall question. He's saying cybersecurity. How does it happen? When you don't have much career prospects, when people want employment, right? Or when people don't offer an internship. So now let me be very, very clear to all of you, right? When I first applied to my first management job, I had 0 management experience, right? And when I was going to apply for that job, somebody said, don't apply. They need 10 years of experience, they need 5 years of experience, right? Firstly, don't listen to your friends. Try and fail, right? I probably failed 2 or 3 times, right? And I still went and did it. But also ask people sometimes, or do a job that sometimes might be irrelevant to what you are doing, right? And then see how you can change. So I'll go back to the story of my help desk job. I hated help job. You answer calls, it was people shouting at you and all that, right? But I didn't stop at that, right? I said, okay, I use this help desk job, but I'm a really good technology person. How can I learn, right? So I went and asked my boss, hey, what's the problem? My boss said, some people are talking too long, right? And he says, why are they talking too long, right? So he says, Suresh, go and find out if you can solve and reduce the call length by 30 seconds for me. I'll give you more projects. I said, okay, fine, let's go, right? And so I didn't like it, but I love project jobs. So I actually found out that the reason why calls were taking so long is because they were changing the batteries on the speaker once every 6 months. And if you reduce that interval, so what happened is because the battery got weaker over time, people just say, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. So the I can't hear you used to extend calls by 30 seconds, right? And I said, okay, why don't we change the battery every 3 months instead of 6 months? And let's see whether it brings down the call. And my boss didn't give me money. I went out and bought batteries. And I changed it for 10 of my friends, and I showed that the time went down by 10, 15 seconds, right? And that came through. So the idea here is go and start off in an area where you might have that first opportunity, but then grab other opportunities as it comes, right? Because it will come. Don't stop. Offer yourself to do more, right? Sometimes you won't get the salary in the first part, but you definitely will over time. Which I think I'm just going to flip to my next slide, Meera, and talk about what do you need to do to adapt, right? Because I think that's very important. You need to what the skills that you need. You're in university today. What are you going to need to help yourself?
Nice.
Go ahead. Now this might be controversial to the teachers as well. I'll tell everybody this. The first one that I feel that I'm very passionate about: memorization is not a useful skill. Okay, today I can look up everything. Absolutely useless for me. Make sure you understand what you are learning. Okay, so for example, if you tell me, and when I used to lecture, I say, people used to come to me and say, algebra is useless, right? I say, no, algebra is useless because you've not been taught how to use it. Push your lecturers, push your teachers, ask them why. If you are learning something, ask them why, make an effort, even if they don't tell you or they can't tell you, make an effort for you to understand why you're learning things, right? So I used to be a computer science student, people said, why do you need to learn compiler design? Compiler design, today everything is compiling. It doesn't really matter, it's all automated. I don't need to know how to do it, right? Or, hey, why do I need to know fast Fourier transforms or some complex mathematical solutions? Because Excel can do it automatically. And the answer to that, I always tell people, is if I understand how they work, right? And if I'm key, I don't memorize, I understand why is a fast Fourier transform important? Why is algebra important? How can I translate that to my real life, right? That makes me that much more powerful, because there are 20 people out there who probably memorize, right? And who don't know what the hell are they doing, right? And I'll be the only one who understood, right? Not to say, having good memory doesn't help, it does, but understanding gets you further and faster, right? Drives innovation as well. How can you, for example, implement a concept in one industry in another industry? And that only happens if you understand well, right? So, for example, if I go back to the Grab example, right? Grab is not a taxi company. Airbnb is not a hotel company. What do? They are matching companies. All they do is they match to supply and demand. So they took the technology of the world, they were in the technology industry, and they applied the technology into the taxi and into the hotel industry. And so that's the key from a memorization perspective, right? Very, 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 very key here. Continuous learning, very important, right? So don't assume that, hey, I graduate, the world is over, right? I'm done, I'm free. You're not free, right? You will be, to be honest, if you don't make an effort learning, you will be jailed even further. You will have smaller and smaller and smaller options, okay? Because the world is going very, very, very fast. So you must never stop learning. So even, as I said, I was doing a course last year, right? I'm a chartered banker, so I've done banking, chartered banking as well. I'm looking at what my next thing is going to be. What do I need to learn to give myself that advantage over somebody else, right? And it could be as simple as learning how to fly a plane, right? Which is one of the things I want to do. I want to learn how to ride a motorbike, right? I just need to keep pushing my benefits of learning, because I see the world very differently the moment you try different things. So getting out of university is not freedom, right? Freedom is being able to do whatever you want. And to be able to continue to do whatever you want, you need to have continuous learning, right? That does not stop, and that is absolutely important for all of you, right? So that's the key thing, right? Thirdly, and this is related to entrepreneurship, wear the failure badge proudly. Okay, so today when I hire managers or managers, right, I used to have many people working with me. At one point, I had 500 people working for me, right? If a guy came to me and said he never failed in anything he ever did in his world, he got all A's and he tried everything, right, and all he did was be successful, usually my worry is that he didn't take enough risk, right, and therefore he never tried. And he never pushed himself in a way that doesn't happen, right? If I, for example, as an employer, get a dashboard that says all the systems are running fine, everything is green, right? It means I'm not pushing it hard enough, right? So I always, earlier this year, I mean, although I'm a techie, I have never written an app, right? Earlier this year, I said, let me just go and try and write an app, right? I still haven't done a good job in it. I still probably suck in writing an app, but it's helped me understand the challenges that developers have, right? And in terms of approaching or starting up new entities, right? Because I didn't do it in my bank, I did it in my home, and just wanted to try doing it to see what kind of challenges people have. How does the Apple Store work? The Apple Store takes 30% of your money. So you charge 99 cents, the guy takes 30 cents from you, right? And you only get to keep 60 cents, but they did nothing but except put a platform for you to publish, right? And you feel that pain. So I failed. If you ask me to today, I still failed in creating the app that I want. I want to have an App Store app by the end of this year, which I'm probably not going to have to do. But I'm not failing. I'm not scared to talk about that failure, right? So you will have ideas in your university dorm life where you will not be successful at. Don't be afraid. Go and try it, right? And that's linked very closely to being street smart, right? So co-curricular activities. Many parents in Malaysia Asian companies typically they say that don't do them or it doesn't work. For me, the answer is it's not do co-curriculum activities or don't study. It's not that, right? I did both, right? I could have got first class in MMU. I didn't because I was also partying hard, doing debating and so on and so forth all around the world, which meant I had a PTPTN loan, which I just paid off last year.
Congratulations.
Yes, pay off your PTPTN loan, kids. That's important. If you have PTPTN, but the co-curriculum activities helps you grow, right? So my father used to tell me he was very worried when I was traveling the world doing debating and public speaking. Okay, public speaking, those of you who debate and public speaking, you know you go for competitions all around the world, right? And I had university to do as well. After I graduated, and I think maybe 5 or 10 years later, he said, you probably got a degree from the university, but I think you benefited most from the co-curriculum activities. And I said, actually, it's both. Because I got a good job. I went to academia and I went to oil and gas, right? Because I had a good degree, but I was able to talk and articulate well, and that's what my co-curricular activities helping me as well. So you've got to do both. Just being, fall flat, book smart alone, not going to help you. You need to see the world, right? It can be simple things. Go help a soup kitchen, Kachara Soup Kitchen. They need volunteers all the time in KL. So you guys are in KL, right? Go and see how people are struggling in the streets. Right, so you can learn empathy. You can learn different skills, like how do you speak to different people at all levels, right? How you need to respect people at all levels, right? And that street smart angle is, I think, very, very important. Be kind. What I mean by that, I'll tell you that I was never the hunk of the school, right? But I was generally quite kind to everybody or helping everybody, right? The people who were jerks to me today are not doing as well. Right, and I think that's one karma. But the other thing also is that when things change, right, and when being a jerk doesn't help you at all, right? You need to embrace people, bring them into the crowd together, help you and drive that. So be kind in university. Talk to everybody, right? The guy that you're sitting left and right, you might be the most popular kid right now, but it doesn't mean that guy is not going to be the next Bill Gates, or that guy is not going to be the guy who's going to create the next speedhome.com or Grab, right? That is going to become a unicorn, right? So all those people who were pissing on Mark Zuckerberg, right, in school, probably now regret that they were there. So keep those contacts, be kind, because that's absolutely important. Jerks never got anywhere. Right? It could have been the past, but I don't believe it helps you today, right? And lastly, entrepreneurship. Today, anybody can start an online shop. You can go to Etsy, you can go to Shopee, you can go to Lazada, experiment, try, learn about, if you just take it as your own activity, open a Shopee shop, right, and learn. You will learn about supply chain, you will learn about finances, you will learn about customer service, you will learn about the internet, right? All you're going to do is go to Shopee, and there's a Shopee Academy there which you can learn, and you can learn all these important skills that you will never get in a class indirectly just by opening a Shopee shop, right? And that's what you've got to try and do, right? You will learn even accounting, right? There's one thing about seeing double accounting, and I know Meera will laugh. I got an A in accounting. I can't remember jack shit of what I learned after SPM. But the skills that you will learn by just doing something as simple as opening a Shopee shop, you can't learn in university, right? So yeah, that's the key thing. Right? Meera, let's look at some of the questions. Do you have anything for me, Meera, before we go to the audience?
Yeah. Suresh, so you mentioned a few things about challenges about managing your co-curriculum side and your degree. I mean, you would have found some challenges there. Now, do you think that the curriculum was rigid, or the actual teaching part? What sort of challenges you faced at that point when you had to choose between focusing on a deadline or traveling for your debates or doing something else?
So I'll tell you, number one, I made a lot of mistakes in that time also, right? And some of them cost me a lot of money, me having to pay PTPTN, right? Because I didn't get first class, right? And so I did that. But I think, what are the challenges, right? So I used to have debate tournaments during exams, as an example, right? And that was very challenging for me. But what I did was I approached the leadership, the management team. There was Prof. God Jasmine at that point in time. He was very supportive of what we were doing. I'll be forever grateful to him for sending us all around the world to go and debate, right? But we approached those leaders and we talked to them, right? We said, these are the constraints. We need to give something that benefits both the school and benefits you, right? Even when you go and talk to a teacher, you can be reasonable to someone, to your lecturers, right? Will there be people who are not pragmatic? Absolutely. The world is not designed to be fair, right? If you can accept the fact that the world is not designed to be fair, actually it's very liberating, right? Liberating for you, liberating for everybody. Some people have advantages that you don't have. So similarly, in co-curricular activities, sometimes it will clash. Make choices, right? Sometimes you have to give up some things, right? I gave up some of my exams. I could have got a 4 flat, and I could have got my PTPM free, but I made choices to go and debate, right? I live with those choices, right? Do I regret them? No, right? And students will have to make those choices as well, right? And somebody is saying very nicely, people saying companies need to take care of their employees and so on and so forth. But in the background, I think Jason is saying that in the background, companies don't really take care of people. Now, I can't speak for those companies directly that you are referencing to, right? But I'll tell you this much: nobody owes you anything, right? If you accept that nobody owes you anything, and you accept that you're going to join these companies to learn and maximize your skill, right? And you're gonna constantly do that. Employers have a vested interest to take care of you if you are good, right? They will have a vested interest. If they don't, you will grow anyway, and some other guy will find you more useful, right? And therefore you will grow and you will change your jobs, right? So yes, many employment companies do not necessarily pay right at the start, right? But what your objective should be, at least in the start, is okay, good. If I make 2,000 ringgit a month as a start, and my first salary was 1,800, I think, but that was in 2002, right? Back then. But yes, if you get that money, what I was concentrating is what I can learn, right? I went in there and said I need to absorb from everything. Anybody had any project that I could do, anything that I could participate in, I was there learning. I was there doing the grunt work. If some senior guy had said that there was something they didn't like to do and they didn't want to do, I would first find out, hey, I don't know what the hell this is. Let me go and do that, right? And take advantage of that, because regardless of the salary, if your learning and knowledge grows, right, your salary will grow exponentially alongside with it. And if you have that attitude that nobody's doing this to me, I'm taking charge of this, right, you are going to benefit, right? And that's absolutely important, right, in taking charge of your careers. If a boss didn't take care of me, I wasn't just saying, oh, the boss didn't take care of me, sorry, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to learn something, and the moment I get my next chance, I'm going to go to my next venture, right? And the boss that didn't take care of me would be forgotten, right? Similar to the people who work for me, right? I'd be very, very, very clear with them. I would tell them all the bad things from the job they're going to join, right? And I'll pay them, and I'll tell them, what is the pros and cons and what everybody can learn, right? But at the same time, trying to recognize that don't just compare with something that's far away. What are you doing to take charge of that relationship, right? Of your career, your job, your things, and so on and so forth, right? And I think that's going to be a nice segue to what I want to do in the next slide, which I really want to talk a little bit about emerging technology trends, right? And what you can do as a student, right? Regardless whether you're an accounting student or not, right? Things will change. So, for example, traditionally people said if you studied medicine, you could only be a doctor. In reality, I've got a friend now who worked in pharma, who's now helping the Malaysian Health Coalition, right? You can go into NGOs, you can go into pharma, you can do a whole bunch of different things, right? So the jobs that you have, or the things that you study need not necessarily be the things that you finally do. And these opportunities that I talked about are going to be very important. The first one is distributed ledgers, right? The rise of how these sort of things come into play, right? So cryptocurrency is something you probably all be familiar with. I heard that APU had a cryptocurrency talk and a couple of thousand people showed up for that. But that's nice. One implementation of it. Non-fungible tokens, right? Non-fungible tokens to recognize assets, digital assets are big. And that has elements of accounting, that has elements of software, that has elements of compensation, and so on and so forth, right? Distributed ledgers will change how we work because it works in the concept that you don't have to believe in the middleman anymore, right? And for example, today, when you want to send money from Malaysia to Singapore, in the past, you have to use SWIFT. Right? And SWIFT was like the number one middleman controlling all the transactions happening. There was a separate way of doing it. They had huge charges and so on and so forth. With the internet, today there's TransferWise. There's so many other types of tools that you can use, right? Because they've democratized data, right? And the rise of distributed data and open data standards are very, very important. So many of you today, for example, and I link this to open data standards. You don't even think about it. You just go and use Waze or Google Maps to go from A to B, right? But actually, the reason why you can do that is because I think it was President Clinton or one of the US presidents sometime in the 90s, suddenly said that he would allow GPS satellite data to be consumed by people who, by technology, right? Then you had the TomToms and you had so on and so forth. For the first time, people in the consumer industry could use it. Now, you're asking me as a Malaysian student, why do I care about whether data is open? With new data gets new opportunities for you to do new things, right? So, example, the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, they opened up their data, or they opened up platforms, they create open platforms where people could go and do business onto that, and as a result, that make money from that. So people came up with all kinds of creative apps, right, that grew. Open data standards are going to revolutionize how things are, right? To the example where today, for example, I work in banking and finance, people don't change banks because they don't want to change account numbers, right? But if you really think about it, do it now, right now. You don't have to share your account number with anybody else. You just share your mobile phone number, which you keep, right? So account numbers become more and more irrelevant because the open data that connects me and Meera can send to me just by knowing my phone number without knowing which bank I work with, right? And if I then give that open data, or the data is now democratized to other banks, you might get new services, right, or new features, right? So people then can interact with each other better, right? So that's the first two, I think, are very much interlinked to each other, right? People are going to be more decentralized, and we see this trend everywhere, right? Data is going to be more open, right? Security is important, and I think that's there, right? And I think the third one is with 5G networks, you might think it's not relevant, right? Until I saw a demonstration the other day of a 5G network where there was a band, and the band was playing at 5 different locations, 5 kilometers apart, right? Using a test 5G transformation network, and they were playing the guitar, and it all seemed as if they were in the same band in the same room, no latency, nothing, right? You think, hey, I'm an accounting student. Why does this matter? Now, what happens if transactions happen in lightning speed compared to how it is today? Today, it takes 10 seconds to send money to Singapore. Tomorrow, it's instant and doesn't really matter anymore. I can do business faster. How does that change my job as an accountancy student, right? I don't know, right? I don't know yet. I don't have all the answers, right? And that can change the world. If I'm a doctor, right, and I'm in Singapore, and I'm the best heart doctor in Singapore, but the patient is in Malaysia, right? If I have zero latency or very small latency, can the doctor from Singapore do a heart operation to somebody in Malaysia, right? I don't know. Maybe, right? And those are the kind of emerging things that are changing in the industry that you gotta worry about, right? And that all relates to very, very important technological changes, right? So that's the top part. The second part at the bottom, I just want to talk a little bit about what's changing, right? So the biopharma revolution, what am I talking about it? As I said earlier, I had a doctor friend who joined the pharmaceutical industry. I have accountants who joined the pharmaceutical industry, right? It's going to become more important, right? Medicines today, they're talking about DNA and genetics and so on and so forth. That's going to impact a lot of things, right? So, for example, if I know biopharma might talk about more pharmaceutical, but in nature. But if I can authenticate somebody using my iris, right, or my thumbprint, right, I can't even imagine right now with my FaceTime actually having to enter a password anymore. Most of the time, I just put my face, and it just opens. So it makes work easy, right? The key to you guys remembering is two things, and I think it's related as well. And the reason why I put digital divide in the center is while all these technological changes are happening, there are also a lot of people who are going to be left behind, right? Firstly, you have to be empathetic to that, right? And I'm learning from this all the time. So I have an 80-year-old father, and he cannot obviously use technology all the time. And sometimes I get frustrated, but how do you teach? And you teach again and again and again. But I realized that even if my uncle does not want to have a smartphone, today he needs a smartphone because that's the only way he can go and check in MySejahtera and different places, right? So there are lots of opportunities also as students, if you're a technology student, to help people bridge that digital gap, right? We might talk about 5G networks, but in many parts of Malaysia, even 3G networks are a problem, right, in some of the rural areas, right? So last year there was this lady, about this Sabahan girl, who had to climb up a tree and just to get to do her exam in University of Malaysia, Sabah. For me, that's a travesty, right, in a country like ours, right? But it's also, as a student, you should be thinking, can I, participate in this? Can I contribute? Can I contribute something that will help make this better for these sort of people, right? And if you help that is an opportunity for you to see, right? And I think that's very, very important, right? And all this, of course, will be tied to sustainable energy being the mainstream, right? Today, a lot of the world, if you go and talk to somebody who's in Shell, they won't say that they are an oil company anymore. They'll say that they are an energy company, right? Because sustainable energy is going to become mainstream, right? And so that's an example where if you learn to be an oil driller, I talked about how things are changing, right? If your whole life is just built on one thing and you don't want to relearn, right? Things like sustainable energy will kill you, right? And will go away, right? If you look at basic things like a Tesla, if you told me that a Tesla car could drive 500 kilometers on a single battery charge, say maybe 5 years ago, I'd say you're insane, right? Today it's possible, right? And if you say a self-driving car is not possible, right? Today it's possible. So what happens to all those people whose jobs are a driver if you don't want to learn again, right? So Google's self-driving car has officially got a driver's license from Nevada, right? The self-driving car got a driver's license. It passed the driving test, right? So those sort of changes, these emerging trends, these emerging technologies are going to drive your career, right? And that's what you're going to have to see in the future as well. And I know we're reaching out to the bottom of the hour, so we'll go into the Q&A sessions. That's pretty much it from a slide perspective for me. And I'm going to go off the slides after this, because I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah, sure.
And we will do the Q&A session to drive that through.
Yeah. We've got some questions coming in, Suresh. The first one, okay, you can see the governments are encouraging us, from Jason. Yeah, he says that governments are encouraging us to be entrepreneurs, to create a startup, okay, to make impact to Malaysians and the world. But most of the time, I do not see Malaysian people actually use Malaysian startup opportunities or technologies available out there. Yeah. So in fact, we always use tools from overseas companies. So how are we going to be a country that achieves IR 4.0, which is overly rated currently? Okay, is this because the Malaysian startups are not good enough to make an impact, or is it because the lack of skills or knowledge? So go ahead.
So firstly, I think let's not piss on Malaysia too much, right? We have our own unicorns as well, right? Things like Grab, right? And when I say Malaysia, also I sometimes include Singapore because there's a lot of Malaysian influence in this. Things like Kasem, I think Maituka and all that. I think one of them recently reached unicorn status as well, right? It might not be an app, but they are definitely Malaysian companies who are unicorns today. Okay, so I think that's very important to recognize. And secondly, when you look at your examples that you're giving, in China, while you might see WeChat as the top winner, right, there were probably 100 other apps that were there as well, right, and who have their own established niche, right? So I think what you're doing is you're comparing to say, hey, there's people are using apps globally. If the lens I apply is the fact that somebody in China today, somebody in Vietnam, and somebody in Singapore is using Grab, a Malaysian application, or somebody's using or selling a car using a Malaysian car trading app in Indonesia today. I think it's Kasem or Maituka, one of those guys just recently reached unicorn status, right? It's amazing to say that you can be a Malaysian company, but your apps are used globally as well, right? And I think many of you don't remember or don't know, but Friendster, when it first came out, right, was owned by a Malaysian. It got creamed down the line through MySpace and through YouTube and all that, and MySpace died. But I think the Friendster guys also have a patent that Facebook bought, and they still pay royalties to them, I think, if I remember reading somewhere. There is a lot of Malaysian technology and Malaysian stuff that are outside in the world today, and we contribute a lot to that in different ways, right? So yes, but even in other countries, like the US and all that, there are probably 10 other apps. You will see the global players bubbling up. Boundaries between countries become less and less relevant if you give value to people, right? If you deliver value to people, it will come down, right? Now, China, and I like how Jason extended that. When I said, oh, in China, everybody uses WeChat and so on and so forth. That's actually only because the Chinese government prevents WhatsApp and a few others like Facebook Messenger from operating within those markets, right? If it's not a totally free market in those areas. Having said that, the Chinese tech space is extremely exciting, right? They have huge market, but they're also very, very innovative. And in fact, what you see is that the Western guys are borrowing from the Eastern guys, right? So a lot of how WeChat as a super app, right, develop things like gaming within the messaging and money exchange within the messaging. Facebook and WhatsApp are copying, right, in their messenger and app application. So, you know, I think we are in a very nice ecosystem given where we stay. If I look at other big Malaysian startups that have done well, AirAsia, extremely proud of it, right? It's you know, it's probably going to survive this pandemic, right? Developed by a Malaysian, they're making a huge impact all around the world, right? So the answer is, will every endeavor succeed? No. For everyone that succeeds, I'm sure there's a bloodbath of 3 or 4 other guys, right? But the difference is the guys who succeeded tried again and tried again. And if you look at their stories, you'll probably see they failed a few times as well, right? And that's hopefully what's going to get that answer. Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Awesome. Suresh, there's another one. Okay, from Anushri. Is the work being done slowly at home as compared to you being in an office environment? So I think what she's trying to reach out to is, you know, how much more efficient are we comparatively home and office?
It's a good question. It's I would say both. It's being done slowly in some areas, being done more faster in other areas. So for areas that require a lot of collaboration, a lot of talking, whiteboarding, and so on and so forth, I miss that in the office. Right, and it's very, really hard. We've had to introduce new tools like Mural. So look up Mural. Mural is a really good. Trello is another really good tool to try and help people work in a collaborative environment. That's what we're helping people drive. But that has been very difficult, and I think it's much worse off working remotely than going into the office, right? Which is why I don't believe the answer is complete at home or complete in the office. The answer is it's somewhere in between. It's a mix of both. Right, and my organization today, we're doing a mix of both, right? So once the pandemic goes over, you know, it'll be like 3 days on, 2 days off, right, and so on and so forth. And I think that's the kind of thing that globally people are going to move to, right? So, but in other areas, it's also very, very beneficial. So, for example, in work that needs lots of focus and scope, working from home helps a lot tremendously, right? And that is very clear. My advice to lots of people is, try to build boundaries between your work at home and what you do in the office, right? And it's very easy to blur those two lines, especially if you're working from the office and you don't switch off. That is bad for your mental health, right? So even if you're working from home, that doesn't mean you work 24 hours. Cut off, right? And if you have an employer that's forcing you to work 24/7, then sorry, man, maybe it's time to find a new job. That employer will probably die because you can get talent. But the third dimension is that people can also get access to jobs in other places. So I have a relative right now whose employer is in Australia, right? And she's working for an employer in Australia, and it's only possible because people are so used to working from home. So what does that mean? It means that for an employee, you suddenly got employers beyond your boundaries, right? And maybe you shouldn't just be looking at remote working for areas just within Malaysia or within your respective countries. Those of you who are here from other countries, right? You can expand beyond that. Right, I think my 15-year-old niece, she's doing AdMaths class with a tutor from India, thanks to COVID, right? She would have never got this tutor now. So tutors doing this IGCSE courses all over the world, and she's getting access to it. So as an employee, now you can potentially do jobs and offer it to lots of people around the world. As an employer, you now have access to talent all around the world, right? So the world is literally your oyster. In a way that you've never seen before. So work from home, everything, all of this and anything you do, right? Just remember this, the extremes are always the extremes. The correct answer is probably somewhere in the middle, right? And that's what we will get to, a good balance with work from home and in the office.
Okay, we still have more questions coming in here.
I think I addressed William's question already just now.
Yeah. We can move on to another one. Yeah, Jason.
Jason has put quite a
Jason.
Is it a good idea to ask in the future if they offer working from home during the interview? Okay, it depends on the company, right? It depends on the company, because you will face employers that are very mature, and you will face who understand the technology future and who understand that's the only way to go. And at the same time, you will have employers who are very, very what I would say, who are very, very conservative. Oh no, I'm the boss. I need to see you at 8 o'clock, and you'll see stupid jokes happening like, oh, 6 o'clock in the evening, you half day, you're leaving earlier, right? So it depends. It depends. You have to make an assessment. Okay, you have to make an assessment, and you have to be willing to say, hey, I might lose this job if work from home is really important to me, right? I can tell you this. The more strategic employers are realizing this whole thing about not working from home doesn't fly anymore, right? I can tell you this. If somebody comes to me, if a mother comes to me and says, I need to work from home twice a week, right, and we jointly agree that 3 days a week in the office, 2 days, I'll say yes, please. Because I also don't want to go and deal with Friday traffic and travel 2 hours on Friday where it's really bad. But you're not going to get that from all companies. So you might go to an interview and ask that question. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. When you are in that interview, make a judgment of that company. Go to Laureate Forum and read how that company does interview with somebody else. Go to Glassdoor, see what they have, do some research. Get that sense first, but have those open conversations, right? Don't whinge, is what I always tell people, right? You will lose sometimes, you will win sometimes. Don't whinge, doesn't help anybody, okay? That's there. Hope that helps. What is your workplace? So
yeah, you can bring out your debating skills now, Suresh.
It's an interesting question, right? So what if your workplace does not respect boundaries? If you feel uncomfortable, right, and if you feel that it's not, speak up. I think it's important you speak up, and be also aware that it can blow back on you, right? But don't be afraid of that, right? So I always tell people, right, that the worst thing you can do is not address the problem, right? Don't hide silently and believe in it, but also acknowledge that if you talk out or you speak out, sometimes you will face some consequences. Okay, but your mental health is important. Those days, people didn't usually care about this. Now, for me, it's absolutely important, right? The worst thing that breaks my heart when I read this whole FMCO and CMCO, people committing suicide and all kinds of stuff, right? It's horrible. It's horrible to see that in the industry. But if it doesn't respect, I would say sit down with your boss, have a respectful conversation, explain it. Some bosses will be absolute idiots and not understand it. Some will. You never know, right? You have to get to that. You have to make that assessment and decide. But if it doesn't work out for you and you don't like that employer, guess what, right? As I told you earlier, the boundaries are now getting bigger. The types of jobs are getting new, right? I have a friend who was retrenched from GSK, right? GlaxoSmithKline Wellcome, I think a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. Now she runs saris. She sells saris online and switched the world and switched her horizons for her, right? And I was very impressed when I saw her sari shop. You need to look at different alternatives. So be aware that there will be consequences sometimes, but don't let people do things upon you. Take charge and respectfully approach that problem. But if it doesn't work, then walk away and do something else. Right? Have that change-driven mindset.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent, Suresh. I have something to ask you. Now, what do you think about writing job descriptions, how we write job descriptions? I mean, you spoke about different kind of skills, different types of skills that we need now it's not necessarily program related to, specifically to the program that you're coming from. So how do you think, we're going to move forward with writing job descriptions? Because when I see them, I still pretty much look at them as very, very with boundaries or with, certain expertise which is needed. I mean, that's the message that I get when I read a job description.
Okay. So I have a very unique, view on job descriptions. I believe that they're a good filtration mechanism, but the moment I get a job, I take the job description and I put it in a drawer and I go to my boss and ask, what do we need to get done? Right, and I think that's the attitude that people have. I get a lot of young guys who I mentor who come and say, "Oh, the boss gave me something. It's not in my JD when I signed up to this." Right? I think JDs are required to help you get an understanding of what is required. Right? JDs are job descriptions. Right? But you as a person need to realize that the industry and the market is also rapidly changing. Right? Don't also not apply for something because you don't meet all the qualifications in the job description. Also, I keep telling people, right, especially the ladies that I mentor, a lot of them I know, right, they tend to pull themselves back, right? Don't hesitate. If you think you can offer value, go ahead and push that. Job descriptions need to start to be less, I would say, rigid, right? I mean, they provide a means of filtering, but they are not the job in itself. 100% in every job that I've gone to, what was written in my job description after a year became irrelevant. But that was not the fault of the person who hired me. That was because the industry changed, and the industry keeps moving, right? So for example, right, if you're an accountant, you have Basel rules to follow, right? Basel 3, Basel 4, and so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
Just because when you came in, they said require, Basel 2 knowledge, and suddenly you went to 3 and 4, you're going to say, no, I don't know because it's not my job scope. Doesn't sound good. So I think it's two levels. Employees need to realize, use the job description as a base to understand roughly what that is, and you can see that, understand roughly the company by that. But also, don't hesitate to go something beyond your thing, especially for fresh grads, right? Bulk of the employers today, I actually smile, right? They'll say, fresh grads encouraged to apply, and the same job description have 5 years experience required, right? And I'm like, what the hell who the hell are you trying to hire, right? So build that thing, but don't use that as a limitation. I think for people to look at that as well. Okay.
Awesome. That's really good answers, Suresh. Yeah. So we have a question from Dash. Okay. So Suresh, work-life balance is important to millennials. They define success differently. This requires employers to change. So what, in your view, are some of the ways the work culture will change? Thank you, Dash.
Absolutely. Right. Any employer that doesn't comply will lose out the long term, right? So I think that there's two ways. So the question I'm going to take you is what is going to be required for a successful employer to thrive in an area where you have millennials, but at the same time, millennials mustn't say that all employers are going to meet this high standard, right? Because you will always have the laggards and the leaders in every market. So in my view, one of the things that people need to look at in terms of success, I don't care how my employees do their work, right? As long as it's done. If they're doing it in a beach in Bali, great. I mean, they can't right now because of COVID. But if they're running their conference calls and they're finishing my projects off a course in Bali, this sort of outcome-based monitoring, I think, is the way of the future, right? And that means sometimes people have to come into the office, collaborate and drive it, and let them be, right? That's number one, okay? So outcome-based thing. Secondly is managers got to learn how to trust people. Right, and as a result of that, I'll tell all people who are managers as well. Sometimes you will get burnt, right? I have got people who I have trusted and who have royally screwed it up, right? But in the 10 opportunities of trust that I've given my employees, probably 1 has screwed it up like this really bad. 9 have been really successful, and that has contributed to my success as well, right? So I always say, hire a smart guy and get the hell out of his way, but make sure you give the guidance, right? And that's very important. The third thing is employers got to be willing to stand in front of their employees if shit hits the fan, right? So I tell all my employees as an example, if shit hits the fan, I'll be there. There's consequences on you for sure because you screwed up in one way or form, right? Take that accountability, learn to do that, right? But I'm standing in front of that and taking that hit, right? And I think employers need to get to that 3 different mindsets, I think, to drive that sort of change, because that's the only way you can deal. And it's not a millennial or not, but that is just tech culture. It's just a new way of working. It's just how we need to change to adapt to a more globalized way of working, which is the reality. Yeah, hope I answered the question.
Yeah, brilliantly. Okay, seriously, it was really good. Yeah, thank you. And Suresh, we've got about 2 minutes. So yeah. What would you like to tell our students, our viewers today, academicians, those members from industry? What would you like to tell, or your final piece of advice?
Okay, so one of the things I'll tell everybody is dream, right? Take risks. Live life a little bit, right? You will screw up. Don't be afraid of messing up. I'll keep saying this, right? Doesn't mean that you do something, you will always have the right answer. You do something, you'll always get it right the first time. The worst thing you could do is not try, right? I've always been a fat guy all my life. I've been trying all kinds of things to reduce weight, right? Heck, I met Dash at a boot camp, right? The people who know Dash who's there, I met him at a boot camp, and I'm still struggling with that. But that doesn't mean I don't try, right? And in all of your careers, try, dream a little bit. The world doesn't have to be fair, right? I keep saying this again and again. In 1997, when I finished my SPM and I got pretty good results, everyone was saying, "Oh, you can go overseas and so on," and boom, the global economic crisis happened. The best thing that ever happened to me was I got into MMU, right? Global learning, right? Took the best opportunities ever. It was the first university in English, right? Today you guys have all in English and so on and so forth. But make the best out of every shitty situation. COVID sucks, but make the best out of it, right? There's definitely new opportunities and so on and so forth. The fact that I'm doing a streaming like not right now to to students, right, without having to leave my house, for me it was a great outcome from COVID, right? It's democratized that sort of access to classes, learning sessions like this, and I want people to open their minds to those sort of things, and that's what's going to drive the future, right? And thirdly, don't worry about all those people who say negative things outside and just want to live and wallow. Oh, Malaysia sucks. Oh, US sucks. Blah blah blah. Doesn't matter. Life is what you make out of it, make from it, right? And have fun, right? At the end of the day, you will mess up. You will get some pain. At the end of the day, have a good day and you'll enjoy yourself. So hopefully everybody benefited from this session. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Meera and team, for giving me this chance.
Suresh, there were some really, really good insights. I'm mind blown, honestly. I'm sure all the viewers are as well today. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time taken on this session. There's a feedback form which is going to be really helpful for us at Enterprise at APU to improvise, as well as to give Suresh some feedback of the session. So please do click on the link and give us some feedback. And we are also going to be sharing a QR code for the e-certs that are going to be issued for joining this session. So please go ahead and scan. Suresh, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanking everyone here today. Thank you so much, guys. See you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.